Okay, baby, it's the last time, okay? For real this time. It's the last time, okay? For real this time. Maybe this time's the last time. Maybe, just maybe this time's the last time.
Alright, this does it. This is it. This is it. I really, really mean it this time.
Listen to me very carefully.
Hey everybody, Josh the Fifth Wheel Gamer here. So we are back again with another Retroid device, and boy what a beaut this one is, you guys. Okay, I said the same thing about the Retroid Pocket 5 when I reviewed it, and I still hold to that because the Retroid 5 is still a fantastic device, as is the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. For retro aesthetics, I mean honestly, the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro definitely takes it. But before we get going down the rabbit hole here, I just wanted to jump into Spec Town real quick. So here I have the 8 gig, the joystick top side model of the Retroid Pocket 6. This has 128 gigs of internal storage, Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 CPU. This is a 1080p AMOLED display at 120 hertz, 5.5 inches. Okay. And so, that being out of the way now, we can focus on the wonderful aspects of this device. So obviously it has RGB lighting around the joysticks, and you can turn that off at will if you don't like it. It does have active cooling, okay? Now, one cool upgrade about this device from the previous generation is the battery size. The battery size in the Retroid Pocket 5 was a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. This one is a 6,000 milliamp hour battery. Now, the only device that I know of that has a bigger battery that's Android powered than this is the Odin 2 Portal, which has an 8,000 milliamp hour battery, and still a beautiful device. Probably the absolute best deal on the market right now, price-wise, for just the base model of this, considering that it literally competes neck and neck with the price of the Retroid Pocket 6. However, because this is a 7-inch display on this device, obviously not going to be quite as portable whenever you start getting up into, a device that's getting close to Steam Deck size, but without all the added weight. Now, we love the Hall joysticks in this device, and it seems like, these look like typical Switch caps, but they're not. They actually seem to be slightly flatter on the top instead of bulging out like your typical Switch sticks would. And of course, these are removable, so you can pop them off and then you can pop them back on, and you can swip and swap and all these other different things. Now, I thought that having this top side was going to mess up my D-pad gameplay. However, with this dome switch D-pad we have down here and the ergonomic bumps that are built into this device, okay, it makes it very, very comfortable still when you're down here playing D-pad centric games. And so this was definitely the model to get. If you're the kind of person that prefers your joysticks down on the bottom, just realize that, when you get into first-person shooters, you're going to be doing the crab, okay? So a lot of people are used to the crab. People that do gaming on smartphones are used to the crab. But to me, it just seems like a recipe for arthritis. I'm over 40 years old now, still doing this stuff. Yeah, make fun of me. Ha, ha, ha. Yeah, old and such. But anyways, so up here, we do have our start, our select, we have our home button down here, we have our back button right here, we have our micro SD card slot right here, and it is pretty easy to open. Not so easy to get your card in and out of, unless you got slightly longer fingernails. We do have a headphone jack on this device, and we have our Type-C charging port right here. You can do fast charging on this device. It also offers charging separation, and you can use the dual screen attachment for this device, but just realize it's going to be slightly off center on this device, so it's not going to look very aesthetically pleasing if you do happen to use it. But not everybody cares, because the screens aren't aligned with what a normal 3DS would have been anyways, considering that the bottom and top display are the same size on this device with its dual screen attachment, versus the original 3DS had a wider top screen and a smaller bottom screen. And so if you wanted something more akin to that for your dual screen gaming, then you need to just go ahead and break down and go get the AYN Thor, which is a better option if you're wanting the more authentic 3DS feel of this particular type of handheld. Now, all of that said, let's go ahead and do a size comparison of this device before we jump into gameplay so that we can see what we're looking at and the iterations from previous generations as well as some other devices that are roughly around the same size as this device. First up is the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, which was the first of the 16:9 devices that Retroid put out was when they started the 3 and 3 Plus line. And so that device has a 4.7-inch display that's at 750p. And it is not AMOLED, but it's still a beautiful device, and it's starting to show its age performance-wise compared to a lot of things, but it's still better than a lot of other devices that you can get on the market. Okay, next up we have the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. And so this was a chip upgrade where they jumped to the base model of this device was a D900, which was the same chip found in the Odin Lite originally, back whenever the AYN Odin first launched. You had the Odin Pro, and then you had the Odin Lite, which carried the Dimensity 900 chip. And the Pro version here has the D1100 chip, which is just barely a step down from the Ion Neo Pocket Air, which actually has the D1200 chip. But this device has the same screen in it that the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus had in it, essentially. But, power-wise, it can hold its own to some extent, but it's nothing compared to the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 that's found in the Retroid Pocket 6 here. However, this device did upgrade the sticks and did upgrade to the analog triggers. And so that was when Retroid really started moving in a good direction with these devices, was the 4 Pro. Okay, so next up we have the Retroid Pocket 5, which is the precursor to this device, obviously. And this is when they started adding in the lights around the joysticks and the all-glass fronts. And so this one had the Snapdragon 865 in it, which actually was kind of neck and neck with the D1100 that had come out in the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. The only difference being that the Snapdragon 865 has a tremendous amount of driver support, and so you can actually get a lot of Switch games to run on the Retroid Pocket 5, as well as a great deal of PC games using GameHub Lite. So pretty cool, but once again, nowhere near the power level of the Retroid Pocket 6 with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 in it. It's not going to play a lot of the games at the same frame rate, and then other ones are just so beefy that it won't even launch them. But the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 has been benchmarked to death and has been supported by the gaming community for such a good little while now that it gets a lot of PC and Nintendo Switch done compared to the Retroid Pocket 5. But the Retroid Pocket 5 is a lighter device. It is a more pocketable device. Okay, and ergonomically it's pretty decent, but the face buttons on it are pretty loud. I would say that the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro, in my opinion, was actually slightly better than the Retroid Pocket 5, but, some people will probably call me crazy on that. Okay, so next up we have the Mangmi Air X, okay, which is a budget device that, honestly, in the heft of it, it actually feels a lot like the Retroid Pocket 6, but power-wise, it is nowhere near it. Plus, it does not have an AMOLED display. It has an LCD display at 1080p, but the screen sizes are the same sizes, with the Mangmi having slightly larger bezels around the edges, but the face buttons on the Mangmi are a work of art, in my opinion. I wish that more companies would adopt the face buttons and the D-pad style. It's just very slick, very premium for a device that is so budget. But, size-wise, it is right on par with the Retroid Pocket 6. Okay, so next up, we have the Ion Neo Conquer Pocket Fit G3 Gen 3, which is a device that has a 6-inch 1080p LCD display, and it is much more chunky than the Retroid Pocket 6. I would say that size-wise, it is much more comparable to the original Odin 2. But like I said, the chipset in it is more powerful, so it can get just a little bit more done than the Retroid Pocket 6 can. The chipset in the Ion Neo Conquer Pocket Fit G3 Gen 3 is about 30% more powerful. But, it's still a very premium feeling device, and, it's not going anywhere. And why not, since we're here, we might as well show the spiritual daddy to this device, the device that came out first, since we did find out from Russ at Retro Game Core that these devices are manufactured pretty much in the same building, I guess. So they actually share a lot of components, they share a lot of parts. But the Odin 2 Portal obviously has the 7-inch 1080p OLED display at 120 Hz. The Retroid Pocket 6 definitely being much smaller and more portable, but the same processor that's in that Odin 2 Portal is in this Retroid Pocket 6. And like I said, it has a ton of driver support. The gaming community's been behind this chipset for quite a while now. And so if you like your Odin 2 Portal, but you're looking for something more portable, but yet still ergonomic and still has all the same bells and whistles pretty much, then get the Retroid Pocket 6. Here it is next to the Ambernic RG Vita Pro, which is a much weaker device, but also has a 5.5-inch 1080p LCD display and light-up joysticks, but it doesn't have analog shoulders and triggers. It's just got regular ones. And this is going to date this video a little bit, but here it is next to the Mini Loom, okay, which is a 4x3 display. However, this one was fairly recently released, and I'm going to be doing a review on it soon. So yeah, this is definitely dating this video. And lastly, here it is next to the Ambernic RG476H. This is a device that's going to be going into a head-to-head comparison very soon with my Neo Pocket S Mini and my Retroid Pocket Nova, if it ever gets here. Okay everyone, so before we get any further in the video, I figure I'll go ahead and do a sound test and we can test these front firing speakers. Alright then, I think that they get loud enough. I mean, it's not blowing me away or anything like that, but, they get loud enough. They're punchy enough and they don't distort. So, you kind of expect that at this point, okay? Last thing before we get into gameplay, another thing I failed to mention is the 2 back buttons here that you can map. Okay, typically I use those buttons to do fast forward rewind for PS2 and things like that. That's what I map them for as hotkeys. But some people really don't like those, and so if you don't like those buttons, then you might as well stick with the Retroid Pocket 5, or if you can find one on the streets, go ahead and get the G2 Gen 2, which is just a little less powerful than this. Okay, so here we are starting out on the lowest end with some Game Boy Color, okay? I figured I'd go ahead and skip regular Game Boy, considering that could run on a toaster. I mean, either of them could, honestly. But I did want you guys to see just how much better these colored games look with an OLED display like this. And if you're playing this thing in the dark, it's been brought up before with previous OLED devices, but it kind of just looks like the screen is just floating above the device. And so it really doesn't do it a justice when you're playing it in the light, but when you're playing in a dark room, you can't really beat this kind of experience, especially when it's nice and ergonomic like this. Alright, jumping into some 4x3 content here, we have Ninja Gaiden Episode 2 for the NES, and if you're not a Ninja Gaiden fan, then I pity you, because this is some of peak Nintendo right here, okay? I'm one of the few people, and I brag about this all the time, but I actually managed to beat all 3 of these back in the day. Probably couldn't beat it now, not without practice, but, the Ninja Magic got way better in the second one and the third one because they let you spawn, like, clones that you could attack your enemies with, which kind of helped out a lot in the difficulty department compared to the very first Ninja Gaiden game. But I really, really enjoyed this series, and it looks amazing on this Retroid Pocket 6. Like I said, 4x3 gameplay. The Retroid Pocket Nova, I can't wait to get that thing when it gets in my hands, when they finally deliver it. But until then, this still looks absolutely amazing, even though it's a 16:9 display on this device. Okay, jumping into some 16-bit gameplay here, we have Gyarados for the Sega Genesis. Okay, if you never played this game, okay, I know this is supposed to be a video where I'm showcasing the device and all that, but if you never got the chance to play this game, okay, if you're the kind of person that plays games just for the music alone, this game's soundtrack is so bumping from beginning to end. Everything from the title screen to the boss fights. I could literally just sit there and listen to the soundtrack of this game, but seeing it on this OLED display in all of its 4x3 glory just gives me all the happy touchy feelies. And here we are with some Super NES gameplay with some Batman Returns. Okay, I really love the Batman games. Even though a lot of people hated the ones that came out on Sega Genesis, I still took the time to beat Batman Returns and Batman Forever for the Sega Genesis. But growing up, I did not get the chance to play Batman Returns on the Super NES. And I really regret that, because the fighting style for this seems very much more akin to like an actual arcade game versus, what I was getting on the Sega Genesis with that title. However, I get the privilege to go back and do it now. Alright, so here we are with some arcade, and this is called The Legend of Hero Tonma. And so if you're into classic arcade games, then, once again, I mean, obviously these are games that you can play on just about any retro gaming handheld these days, but it's just the fact that when you play them on an OLED, it's the look factor, okay? It's the wow factor of how much better everything looks whenever you play it on one of these things, especially when it's a screen that just makes everything just pop the way that these things do. And especially when it's a device that is this comfortable. Okay, so next up we're jumping into the 32-bit era with Game Boy Advance. That's right, a lot of people are still unaware that the Game Boy Advance was actually a 32-bit machine. But, so 4x3 content is going to stretch out quite nicely on here, as you see here with Fire Emblem. And if you're into RPGs, then yeah, definitely jump into this game right here. The Fire Emblem series, along with Golden Sun, they're just the Game Boy Advance has such an extensive and beloved library for these types of games. Okay, everyone, so continuing in our 32-bit journey here, and I've got Driver running for PS1, and this is in 16:9. I've got it stretched. However, I've got the FMV set to 4:3 just to keep the original aspect, but I'm going to fast forward it just to show you how fast this thing fast forwards, and this is at the maximum resolution of PS1 for this particular game. But if you output this to video, you can put this thing up to 4K, 8K. I mean, you can really do a number with some graphics. But let's hit fast forward and check it out. Yeah, we are zooming right now. Zooming. These cutscenes would last a few minutes whenever you first fire up this game originally on the PS1. But as you can see right there, I just zipped through all of that pretty much instantaneously. So to me, Driver 1 and Driver 2, in my book, they're kind of like the precursors to GTA 3 on the PS2. And, looking back at it now, seeing how wobbly all the textures are and stuff is kind of crazy. But, once again, you look at what you're doing. You're a guy, you're jumping into a car, you're driving, you're smashing through things, you got to go get the bad guy or whatever. But, I mean, this game, at the time it came out, was a masterpiece. And looking at it on this OLED display is like a major remaster when you upscale this to 1080p on this AMOLED display. Alright, so jumping up to the N64 era, okay, we have here some Off-Road Challenge. I don't know if you've ever played this game in particular, but very cool little off-road racing game, essentially built on the same engine, I believe, as Cruisin' USA was. And so if you're playing something that has a hard time running Cruisin' USA, then it'll have a hard time running this game as well, because like I said, built on pretty much the same engine. But this system is going to cut right through any N64 games pretty much, and any N64 games that would normally have graphical issues because of the emulator. There are certain settings that you can change. I'd shown in a video of the Ambernic RG557 how you can change to a different renderer, and it will let you run those games, albeit you're going to be running them in their 4x3, and you're going to be running them at the native resolution, which is, right now this is upscaled to a full 1080p, but I decided to keep it in 4x3 because this is going to give me an idea of what it's going to look like when the Retroid Pocket Nova comes out, and so I like what I'm seeing so far. Next, I figured I'd jump into some Nintendo DS gameplay with Final Fantasy VII Revenant Wings, okay, since this also is essentially a 64-bit system. And so if you're a big Final Fantasy fan and you love the Nintendo DS, and you want to play something that could potentially be an unsung hero of that generation, then jump into this game right here. Okay, so here we are jumping into some 3DS gameplay with Yoshi's New Island. Okay, and if you're a big fan of the Yoshi's Island series, then, you know, you're in luck because this game plays pretty darn good. Apart from, you know, the typical shader caching that you'll run into with any 3DS emulator pretty much, but Azahar seems to do a very admirable job with most 3DS titles. As a matter of fact, there are some titles that I could not play very well on Citra that do definitely seem to be running better here on Azahar. Okay, now jumping into some Sega Dreamcast here with some Giga Wings 2, which is a shooter game that I've never actually played before, but for you guys, I'm trying to get more adventuresome, and I'm trying to venture into more of the systems that I don't typically play. And also, when I saw this actually running, I was like, okay, that actually looks kind of insane for it to be just a, you know, your typical flight shooter game or whatever you want to call it. And so I'm not used to these types of games just because my eyesight sucks so bad that typically anything that gets shot at me ends up taking me out pretty quickly. And so I need glasses. I need better glasses, more specifically. I have glasses, but you know, I'm halfway blind, guys. What do you expect? I'm 40 years old, huh? You know, not everybody can just be that dude that, you know, walks around with perfect health all the time. Okay, so I've been seeing a lot of people emulate this game on the Xbox 360 emulator as well as PS3 emulation, and I think that a lot of people forget about the fact that this game actually had a PSP port. And so it's, you know, the little God of War cologne. Okay, yeah, smells real good to me. No, the God of War clone that it was, Dante's Inferno. And, you know, pretty fast hack and slash action going on here. I mean, to me, it did not live up to the level of God of War, obviously. But on the PSP, for it to be, you know, looking as decent as it does, especially when you're upscaled to 4X like I am right now, or if you output this to a TV and you decide to upscale it even further, then it does look really, really good for a PSP title. Okay, everybody, so next up, we're going to go ahead and jump into some Gamecube. And so here I am with Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. Okay, so if you don't want to deal with trying to play the remasters and different things like that using a Nintendo Switch emulator, then, you know, you can always just jump back onto the original on the GameCube, and it's going to look beautiful because this is upscaled. Right now, I've got this upscaled at a full 3x, okay? So the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chipset in this does an absolutely amazing job. There's no reason that you should not have fun with this game. Okay, so jumping into Nintendo Wii, and it's more of the same as it was with GameCube pretty much. The Nintendo Wii wasn't a much more powerful system than the GameCube, and so pretty much most of the games that you would expect to be able to play, you're going to be able to run them on this chipset with pretty much no problem. And don't forget, you know, you actually had some Call of Duty titles and some Dead Space titles and things like that that actually came out on the Wii that are definitely going to be worth looking up some control profiles online so that you can map this thing properly to make it to where you can have the best experience out of that. But like I said, you have to look up the different profiles so that you can set a profile per game to make the best of it. Okay, so here we are with Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb for the PlayStation 2. Okay, and this is a notoriously hard game to get running, okay, and the fact that I'm able to sit here and run it at 1080p right now is awesome. However, I will say, if you're going to attempt to run this particular game, then you are definitely going to want to turn off any kind of interlacing patches and things like that, because otherwise it's just not going to run for you. And but as you can see it right now, this is kind of like you know, I would say that Lara Croft and Nathan Drake owe everything they are to Indiana Jones, even though I'm not the hugest Indiana Jones fan, which is kind of surprising because I 110% love the Tomb Raider games as well as the Uncharted series. But when you play this game, that's the vibe that you're going to get from this one. You are definitely going to get Uncharted and Lara Croft Tomb Raider type vibes from this game. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 is really the first device that I can say comfortably somewhat dips its toes into PlayStation 3 emulation. And the only thing about it is, though, is if you're using an app like APS3E, then you need to make sure that you download the turnip driver for it, which I believe is 26.1.3, which is the one that I have installed. I may have said that backwards. It could be 26.3.1, but I think it's 26.1.3. But once you install that turnip driver into the settings menu of this particular emulator, then you can get this particular game to run full speed pretty much. Now, that's not to say that there's not going to be any bugs with this particular emulator, because this PlayStation 3 emulation is still very much in its infancy. And so if you would like to, play PlayStation 3 games, just set your expectations, okay? And not only that, but if you have a Snapdragon 8 Elite device that has active cooling on it, like the Odin 3, then you're going to get better results, obviously, because you do have more power with a device like that. Same thing with the Ioneo Conquer Pocket Fit with its G3 Gen 3, which is, once again, that chip is also more powerful than this one. However, this is just, like I said, if there are a couple of PS3 games that you wanted to try, then you can dip your toes into it on this device and see what kind of results that it yields for you. And so here you can see right now I am in the beginning stage of the game where the Chimera have actively overrun the streets and started taking out all my boys. And, you finally get to take one of their pew-pews away. And when you do, that's when you start getting into some real firepower in this game. And so you can see right now that this game is running at 30 frames a second pretty much with this particular turnip driver. And so, like I said, if you try to do this game without this turnip driver, then you're not going to get very good results. It's just going to crash on you over and over again. And so you have to take your time with this emulator to work your way through the settings of it. Otherwise, you're going to be in for a world of disappointment. And even so, like I said, there are plenty of games that just are not going to run on this thing just yet, okay? You're not going to be playing God of War 3 on this thing. Just hang that idea up, okay? We're still not there yet. But it is a novelty. We'll put it at that. And if you can get one of your favorite PS3 games to run, then, have at it. Enjoy yourself. Alright, now here we are with some Friendtendo glitch with Fairy Boy Cries into the Crown. It's always got to be something different, But as you can see here, this game is pretty much running at a decent frame rate. I mean, it's not going to wow you, but at the same time, just the fact that you're able to get it to run, pretty much around the 25 frames a second mark is pretty good. You're going to have some artifacting every great once in a while, depending on what scene you're in, what level you're in. Like you see that you got the little square that popped up right there. And I'm sure that I could probably try out different turnip drivers. This is the one that got popped up recommended. This is running the T23 driver on this device. But, if you want to take your chances and try to play it, and if you can deal with your frame rate not quite hitting 30 a lot of times, then absolutely, why not? There's been plenty of people that have actually managed to beat this game on devices like this, I'm sure. Now, stating what we've just stated about, the Tears of the Kingdom, there are plenty of other games that are going to run either at or close to full speed on Nintendo Switch. This one is kind of like a knockoff between Hollow Knight and Ori almost. It's a game called Constance. And so, very creative. I'm going to guess and say this is probably an indie title. I'm probably going to look it up after I shoot this video just because of the fact that it is a beautiful art style that they've got going on here. But the gameplay is absolutely 110% similar to Hollow Knight. And so I think that Hollow Knight has kind of become its own thing and has set a pattern for a lot of other games to play on the Nintendo Switch, especially games that have really, really interesting art styles. And so, like I said, this game is called Constance for the Nintendo Switch. Okay, so next up, we're going to play some Left 4 Dead 2, and we're using GameHub Lite for this, 5.1.8, and the settings that I have on it, okay, in the compatibility, I have Proton 10, ARM 64X-2. I have it set to performance mode. I'm using turnip driver 25.2.0_R4, and we are using DXVK version 2.4.1 async with VK D3D-2.12 for that version, and the CPU translator is the stock 2025-1025. Okay, so here we are jumping into some gameplay, and I have turned on the 120 hertz refresh of the screen just to show you guys what it looks like. And as you can see, it is lightning fast for this game in particular. I do have frame gen turned on here as well. And so one thing to bear in mind whenever you are utilizing Game Hub or Game Native or WinLater, whichever one you're doing your PC gaming on, okay, is that when you go to use these things, think about the games that were on the PlayStation 2, the PlayStation 3, whatever, and then think to yourself, hey, did that game have a PC port? Because while PlayStation 3 emulation on this device is awfully hit and miss, okay, you can 110%, if you find the PC port of some of these PS3 games or Xbox 360 games, and you can run them through an app like this, and you will have such better success. And if you can choose between your control layout, between the Xbox layout or whatever, and you can change things up the way you want them. And so that way, if you want it to play like it was on the PlayStation 3, then just remap the controls and make it do it. Alright, so another thing to consider about this device is the fact that it has Wi-Fi 7 and Bluetooth 5.3. And so, utilizing Bluetooth controllers for this device or any type of game streaming that you want to do directly from your home PC, if you don't want to have to jump into different emulators and things like that, you're just absolutely going to have a blast with this device, okay? I have zero doubts about that. And, if you are someone who needs the bigger screen, then go for the AYN Odin 2 Portal, okay? Get the 7-inch display. The price is definitely right on that, okay? But if you love the portability of this device, or just the overall ergonomics, the comfortability, whatever it may be, okay, then jump on this thing, okay? Because it is a masterclass in power and portability. So what do I think about this device overall? Okay, as someone who has owned several handhelds at this point, some with glass screens, some without, some with OLED, some without. Okay, honest to goodness, my personal opinion is we are nearing the final echelon when it comes to gaming handhelds on Android and what they are going to be capable of in the future, okay? Pretty soon, the only real true upgrades that we're going to have are going to be the chipsets themselves, because the displays, okay, with 120 hertz refresh, I mean, it's like you really don't need much more than what we are looking at right now, okay? And so I'm just absolutely amazed at where we are. And then, and let's not forget about Android gaming, people. Okay, we got ports of Red Dead Redemption and Tomb Raider Remake on Android now. And then all the other cool games that we've had that have come out on Android, like the Telltale Walking Dead series. And you've got ports of games like Hollow Knight and Hollow Knight Silk Song on Android. I'm not so sure if I'm supposed to be telling people about that. But yeah, like I said, I believe that this device, when it comes price to performance and this form factor at this particular size, you're not going to find anything better unless Ioneo decides that they want to come out with a device that's this size and slap an OLED in it, but it's like kind of too little too late. They're going to have to put a Snapdragon 8X Elite, and they're going to have to do it like Elite version 3, like 2 more generations down the road or something before it'll even account for anything for them, okay? But other than that, I think this device is amazing. The battery life is great, and it can do pretty much everything that I personally want it to do. The only thing I'm waiting on is PlayStation 3 and Xbox emulation to catch up to where we don't have to have such powerful hardware to run those types of games. Anyway, you guys, y'all let me know what you think about this particular handheld. But I'm going to be doing a comparison video with this handheld and my Ioneo Conquer Pocket Fit probably. And when the Retroid Pocket Nova comes out, you know, I'm going to look at some of these games and see whether, hey, would you rather play this in 4x3 or would you rather play this in 16:9? You know, is the weight of the Retroid Pocket Nova, the balance of that, going to be like a determining factor? Because I know a lot of people like devices that might be slightly less heavy. And so this device does have a lot more heft to it than the Retroid Pocket 5 did. I can certainly say that. But for the price, I mean, Retroid is just on point every single time you turn around, you guys. So anyway, y'all let me know what you think of this video. Comment down below. Let me know some of your favorite games that you might want to see me run in a future video, okay? Because I don't want to run the same games over and over again when I do videos. But you guys take it easy. I'm Josh, Fifth World Gamer, and I am out of here. Like and subscribe for more great content. Share and comment down below.